possibility of minimum wage to provide a truly good income for Vermonters. I did vote for minimum wage in this last biennium for an increase, and did so out of a frustration that our incomes are not rising as fast as the states around us, and I think that's totally unacceptable. I think that having, the states, we are lower than the lowest of the 6 New England states and New York State, and in addition to that, our rate of increase in the last 5 years has been slower than those other states.
Quick comment from Mr. Racine.
Well, I appreciate, Mrs. Snelling, that you seem to be supporting Act 60 tonight, because it is doing a lot of good around the state, and I'm pleased that you acknowledge that. Berkshire and a majority of Vermont towns are beginning to see the real benefits of Act 60, and it's good that even some of the opponents of Act 60 are recognizing that, and I applaud you for that, because it really is providing opportunities in communities that didn't have those opportunities before. And, it's not perfect, and it's probably going to be changed, but it's doing what we wanted to, and it's a step forward. And too often I hear the opponents talk as though we can go back, and we can't go back. We need to be going forward, and Act 60 is our best effort to do that. So I appreciate the caller pointing that out to us about Berkshire. That was great.
Let's talk to Jeff, who is calling from Addison. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Recently, transportation issues have been getting increased attention, with bridges collapsing and so on. However, during the 1980s, when Mr. Racine was in the legislature, he supported all sorts of programs that resulted in the raiding of hundreds of millions of dollars from the Transportation Fund. I suspect that if these monies were actually spent on roads and bridges, that we wouldn't be in this situation today. I'd like to know whether each of the candidates would support an effort to require the use of funds raised for transportation to be used only on transportation projects.
Okay, Jeff. Mr. Racine.
Well, I've got to start with some of the comments made in asking that question. I have not seen a bridge collapse in Vermont yet. I think that's a real overstatement of what's going on out there. And the second is hundreds of millions of dollars being raided from the Transportation Fund. That's just not even close to being accurate. Over the years, as the two funds have been in surplus and deficit at different times, money has been transferred back and forth between them, and I think over the course of the 80s, it probably came out in balance. The point here is that in the last several years, when the state was in a deficit situation, the state had to set priorities, and just about everything the state did was somewhat underfunded, and bridge and roads were included in that. And in hindsight, I think those were still the right decisions to be made. We had many priorities in the state of Vermont, including our children's programs, education, health programs, environmental protection, and including roads and bridges. And everything suffered in that time. Now that we have the economy in better shape and revenues in better shape and money coming in from the federal government, additional funds for transportation, we have a real opportunity here to catch up on some of those roads and bridges, and to help the towns with their roads and bridges. So I am very hopeful that if we set our priorities correctly, and we do first things first, and we work on what we have and fixing what we have, we'll be able to catch up on some of the backlog of road and bridge work.
Mrs. Snelling?
Well, I think it is imperative that we do our best to repair. If you drive around the state a lot, as I do, you find that you are bumping into potholes regularly or having to go around them, and that the bridges are not in good repair. And we have to make the changes in priorities in our budgets that will allow us to at least maintain our roads and bridges. And we used to say culverts, too. Because
we'll fix that
drainage is good as well. That's part of economic development, too, is to have good transportation around the state. So we really need to do it. Now, there was an agreement earlier, significantly earlier, before your time, I think, probably, or maybe during part of that, when the amount of money that transportation was costing the state was acknowledged, and there was a sharing of some of the costs of central government. And
that was during the 1980s, because all of the administration agency and the tax department and personnel department all paid out of the general fund.
Yeah.
And what was done at that point was the transportation agency has to pay its share of the costs of administration.
Which
I think that was a good thing.
Seems reasonable to me. And I think that's part of what people are complaining about, however, when they look at the budget, and complaining about as not treating transportation fairly. But I think that part is.
Let's talk to Bill, who's calling from Burlington. Hi, Bill. Welcome to Switchboard.
Yes, this is a question for Mrs. Snelling. Tonight I've heard two, I guess, snide comments from you directed at Lieutenant Governor Racine. One relating to something like it's your deficit, and the second about some comment about Princeton. And I guess my question is, I thought you were advocating a civil tone in this campaign. And given the history of what happened under your leadership with the Environmental Board, can we really believe that you are going to continue that civil tone in light of these snide comments that you've been making?
I was being humorous in the Princeton question, and that is because the Ivy League does toss such humorous comments back and forth all the time. And I happen to be involved with another member of the Ivy League, and that's why I said it. But perhaps if Mr. Racine took it inappropriately, then it was not the right thing to do. As far as talking about your deficit, I think I had just made the point that he had been part of that deficit, and that's the only reason I did that. I don't think that people who know me consider me to be someone who is uncivil.
Let's turn to John now, who is calling from Hartford. Hi, John. Welcome to the program.
Yes, I have a question for Senator Snelling. And I would like to know if you, in your proposal for amending or changing Act 60, how would you change or would you leave the land use program as it stands in Act 60, which means the full school funding portion and then the town or
the municipal part is funded by the state.
Yes, and but it is not fully funded or it is not locked in. Would you propose any changes in that?
Well, I think the feeling is as long as you're having a statewide tax,